today I'm going to walk you through how I made these cute little emoji and just regular magnets. So come along with me as I show you how I made them. So in your craft kits, you're going to find, of course, your modeling clay. This is an air drying modeling clay, so you will find that when it dries kind of quickly and it will leave a residue on things, so you're going to want to make sure that you're careful about the surfaces you're putting it on, which is why you have the wax paper. So the wax paper is to protect the surface that you're setting your clay on and then giving you a spot to let your clay dry. You're also going to find these tiny magnets. On the back side of every magnet it has a little peel off sticker so that it will adhere to your clay creation so you can have a magnet. And then you're also going to have some paints in an assorted color, and then you're going to have some Mod Podge. So Mod Podge is going to seal and protect your clay so that after it has been painted, hopefully that paint and everything will, stay on it. So with all that said, we aren't going to be touching a lot of this for a while because this is a longer craft. So we're just going to set these to the side. Now before I got started, I actually sketched out some designs for what I wanted my clay to be. Now today I have set this kind of to be an emoji magnet design. So I have a couple of cool designs. Of course, we've got our cat face emoji, heart eyes, crying face, cool guy with sunglasses. But if you're not into emojis, or if you kind of want to make your own, you're more than welcome. I also made a cactus that I'm going to show you how to make. And the only thing to keep in mind is if you don't want your magnet to show behind it, to make sure that your design is bigger than the magnet itself. So all of my faces are bigger. I have a nice spot in the middle of my cactus where I can attach the magnet and you won't really see it from the front. So just keep that in mind when you're sketching out your magnets. Another thing to keep in mind when you're making them is if you make them too big, you might need more than one magnet. So if you put one magnet on the top and one on the bottom, because if your magnet gets too heavy, then it won't actually attach to anything and it might just fall off, which would be kind of sad. So just keep that in mind. I'll show you when I make my emojis here. I'm gonna try and make them pretty flat so that they don't get too heavy and weigh it down too much. So before we get to that though, we're gonna actually have to work the clay. So this is an air drying modeling clay, and what that means is it will dry out in the air throughout the day, and it's supposed to take only about 24 hours. However, if you have little bits of it, it does sit on your fingers and it does dry really quickly, and it comes off once you have water, but you do want to be careful with that. But before we get started, we can't just get going. We have to kind of work the clay. So just kind of play with it a little bit and kind of make sure it's all smushed together and uniform. That's pretty much the same. It feels pretty consistent throughout, and if you don't want your fingers to look like this while you keep going, you can wash them off, but your hands will keep getting that clay all over them, so it's up to you, but you'll be run into the sink quite a bit. So the cool thing about the wax paper is not only is it gonna help from keeping your surface too dirty, but it's also see-through, so I can put a design underneath it and it can help me size out all of my pieces. So for my emoji magnets, what I'm gonna do is every piece of my design is gonna be a separate piece of clay, if that makes sense. So the first thing I'm gonna do is its face, which is just this circle, and I'm gonna kind of guess how much clay I'm gonna need. And that looks about right. And then I'm gonna make it nice and round because we're gonna flatten it out really nicely. So alright, so now I have a nice ball and I'm gonna put it down, kind of just flatten it, as evenly as I can with my hand. And if you have any tools that you want to use, you can absolutely do that. For instance, I might get here a paintbrush and kind of just flatten it out this way, kind of like a rolling pin. But just looking at it before I go too much further, that is quite a bit of extra clay. It's a little too thick, if you can tell, so I'm actually going to take some clay out and put that with my reserve clay, because like I said before, we don't want our magnet to get too heavy, or else it might not stay on whatever surface I'm using. So I'll just roll it out again. Okay, and that looks a little better. And remember, we have this little design underneath, which will help. And I want to make sure that my face is kind of circular so that it looks more like the emoji it's supposed to be. All right. Now, if you feel like your clay is getting too dry, take a little bit of water on a paper towel and just gently tap it, or take a little on a paintbrush and just kind of brush it down, because you don't want it to dry out while you're using it, because like, woo, sorry, because what we want to do is we want to attach all of the pieces so that all of my pieces are attached before it dries. So I've got my face, and it's okay if it's not perfect because it is a cool handmade little clay thing. So there, we're gonna leave that there for just a second while we do some of these little bits. And I'm gonna make the eyes, and that won't take much clay at all. So make sure you have kind of the same size here so your eyes don't look wonky, unless that's what you want. That's entirely cool too. Sorry if you can't see what I'm doing with the clay because my hands are so dirty. But I think I'm still grabbing way too much clay here. Okay, so now the cat's eyes, I was looking at emojis to try to make sure I got the right shape. They're kind of longer than they are round. So I'm gonna just gently kind of roll it to get that shape. You can kind of see what I'm doing down here. Rolling it till it kind of flattens out and then pressing it into the right shape. Alright, so I kind of like how that looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take now my face, and before you can set it onto your clay, if you want to connect two pieces, what you have to do is you have to take something like a pencil, or maybe if you have a butter knife or a fork, you have to lightly score it. So what that means, I'm going to use a pencil so that you can kind of see what I'm doing, is you gently kind of make the surface have a texture. And that's so that the clay can kind of bond and have something to grab onto. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to look at where I want my eyes, and I think I want my eyes. I'm just going to put a little dent where I want my eyes. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, and that just gives the clay something to connect to. I'm just kind of wiggling it around a little bit. And I'm just gonna, my clay is feeling a little dry, so I'm gonna get my paintbrush. I have some water over here, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of water, just a little, because you don't want it wet, or else your clay is gonna be really hard to work with. And you're just gonna wet it down a little, and then take your little eyes here and press them in like that. Alright, and you should be able to see now I've got my two little, oh dear, it's too bright, two little cat eyes. So we'll set that off to the side, and I'm gonna get working on this little nose here. And I'm just gonna do the same thing. A little too much clay because the nose is super little. Alright, and there we have the nose. I'm just going to do the same thing to the nose. And get a little water. And just make it a little damp. Oh no, I made it a little too wet, so it doesn't want to stick. So that's what you gotta kind of watch out for. Okay, there we go. Alright, and now for the mouth. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of mark out where I want it. And then I'm gonna kind of push it in because he's kind of got this kind of grin. And then we're gonna make some teeth. So I got the top teeth, and then we'll give him his little fangs here. One. Oh dear. Now I'm just kind of smoothing it down. And now the last part to do for the cat is to make his little ears. Alright, so for this one, again, I'm going to take two pieces and try to make sure that they're the same size. Okay, so for this one, I want to make sure his ears kind of look the same. So of course we're going to kind of use our sketch down here. And I want them to be flat. There's one ear. I can feel my clay is starting to get a little too dry, so I'm going to add some water to that. And if you add water at any point, make sure you knead the water in. So just kind of mix it in there really nicely. Otherwise you'll have a different consistency for your clay. Okay. Same thing with this ear. Make sure that they're the same size. They seem pretty similar to me. So I'm going to come over here with my cap. And this one I'm going to do a little differently. I'm going to put the ears up a little like this, and then I'm actually going to kind of smush them down and in. Add a little water so that it kind of merges together. And then I'm just going to smooth it down a little bit. Alright. And it's not perfect, but here is our first magnet. So I'm going to take a pause here and we're going to set this one aside to dry. Alright, for our next emoji magnet, I thought I would show you how to do it if you didn't want to add all the little pieces to the face, if you just wanted to make the clay base and then paint the face on yourself or draw it on however you want. I'll show you how to do that. I had to add a little water because my clay was kind of feeling a bit dry. Just remember, if you add more water to your clay, to evenly mix it so that you don't have any of those dry bits, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take the clay, put him back underneath, roll it out. Don't think I have enough clay this time, which is okay. Or well, maybe I do. Ooh. Oh no, my paintbrush broke. Okay, so now I have my flat emoji face, and I'm a little worried it might be too thin, so I'm actually going to add a little more clay because I don't want it to be so thin that it'll break. And now I'm worried about that paintbrush coming apart, so I'm going to use a different paintbrush. There we go, that feels a little better. Alright, and that's it. If you just want to paint the face on, all you have to do is let this one dry with your other magnets, and when it's all dry, you can go ahead and paint it up. So, take a brief break, and then we'll move on to the next one. Alright, so once again, I put a little more water in my clay, and I made sure to knead that up nicely so that it is consistent throughout. So all I did is I just wetted a paper towel and I kind of tapped it a little bit, and then you just fold it in until you have a nice consistency and it's not dry or too wet. Alright, so the last one I'm going to do today is going to be the cactus, and like I mentioned at the start of the video, these are my designs. I think that these are pretty cool, but you absolutely can do whatever designs you like. So I'm going to start with the main part of the cactus, which is this. And remember, for this one, it's a little different design, so we have to make sure that it's wide enough for our magnets. Otherwise, it won't fit on the magnet and you'll have some magnet in the background. So, I'm gonna go ahead and roll it out. So for this one, we want it to be longer, like this, and that might actually be a little too big, but I think that'll be okay. And what I'm gonna do to make this line is I'm gonna actually press down on either side, and then just kind of pinch it together like that. And there you have kind of the design of your cactus. Alright, now I'm going to make this base. And this one, just kind of eyeballing how big I want it to be. Now for this one, we're going to be attaching 2 different pieces of clay again, so we're going to have to score it and then put a little water on. But first I want that kind of ledge to the pot that it's in, so I'm going to take this and kind of smoosh it down like that, and then I'm going to fold it over. So I hope that made sense, so that it looks more folded. And then I'm just going to roll it down so it doesn't look so smushy. I might have too much clay here. If you find you have too much clay, that's alright. Just roll it out and start over. Yeah, I think I might have too much clay, so I'm gonna try again. And I don't want it to dry out, so I'm gonna add a little bit of water here. Mix it up. Okay, that feels a little better. Alright. Let's try that again. I think I'm actually going to do it a little differently. Okay, so I want the shape of that pot there. there's the shape of the pot for this basic shape, and what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to score the bottom of this here. And then here. Then I'm gonna get my little bit of water. And press them together. Just smooth out anything that you aren't happy with. Alright, so there's the bottom part of my pot. Then I'm gonna make this lip now. That dried out a little bit. So it does dry out fast, so just add a little bit of water and make that flat part. Just gonna make kind of a snake creature here. And I'm gonna flatten that out with my Yep, and that is a good size for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get it wet. Score it down. And lightly wrap it around. I have a little extra on the side here. I don't know if you can see it, so I'm just going to go ahead and take that off because we do not need that extra clay down there. Right. I see that I have two pieces of cactus here, but I think that'll make it a little too heavy, so I think I'm only going to put the one extra cactus arm. So keep that in mind when you're making your magnets here, that you can change up the design if you want. It is all yours, so you get to make it how you like it. Thinking that's a good amount, maybe a little too much actually. We're going to do the same thing we did with that first piece, kind of make a chunky bit, and I think I'm right, I think I have way too much. Awesome, so that looks a little better. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make those 3 lines, or the 2 lines like I did with the first one. And it's going to be the same thing. 3 little rolls here. And then you kind of just pinch them together. But this one has a curve to it, so just gently pull it into the shape you're looking for. Careful not to squish it too much or you'll lose those little lines, those little grooves. I think I'm going to put it right there. So I'm going to do what I did before here. Get it a little wet. Then I'm going to do the same way I want it to attach. Get that a little wet. And then we're gonna press them together. Alright. I'm just gonna make sure that they're connected. Alright, and then in the back here. Alright, and we're gonna set those aside to dry. So if you find that you have started your project and you need to take a break, or you don't have time to finish them all in one setting, and you still want to kind of play with your clay, make sure that you put your extra clay in a airtight container like a Tupperware or perhaps a Ziploc baggie, so that it can't dry out all by itself. If you want to keep working on your little magnets or your little designs, what you'll want to do is take a wet paper towel or a light cloth, and just, when it's just a little damp, put it over your creations and then put something like clear plastic wrap over them, and then you'll want to put those in an airtight container as well, like a plastic baggie or perhaps a Tupperware. So however you decide to do it, just make sure that if you're not done with your clay, it doesn't have the opportunity to dry out. Otherwise, if you are all done playing with it and you just want to get going on painting, leave it to dry overnight like me. Alright, so like magic, I have let these sit for 24 hours and they are now dry. So the only downside to this is that I did not attach one of my cat's ears properly and it did break off. However, one of the things we gave you is Mod Podge, and while Mod Podge is a sealant, it is also a glue. So I am going to get some paper towel here, and I'm going to take my paintbrush, and I'm just going to dip just a little bit onto here and just use it like a normal glue. And you will want to let this sit to let it properly attach. Just about 20-30 minutes, maybe longer if it's a more complex piece. So I'm actually going to set this aside to dry, so we won't be painting that one first, but I'm going to go ahead and just dive right into painting these, and I'm going to speed it up because I feel like that'll be kind of boring to watch me do. Alright, that's my first layer. I am just going to let that dry for a little bit and I'll be back in a flash. Hello! So, as you can see, my clay creations are already painted, and that is because the video doesn't exist because the iPad died and I didn't notice while I was painting. So I'm very sorry you don't get to see me paint these. I didn't do anything special. I just used regular paint that you guys have. If you want to use other materials that you have at home, you're more than welcome to. For this guy, because he was just a flat circle, I did sketch on his face with a pencil so that I wasn't just freehanding it. You can do that, you don't have to. So yeah, so pretty simple. I'm sorry you guys don't get to paint with me in this one, but I think you guys will be okay without it. So next we're going to put our Mod Podge on. This is our sealant. And to do that, we'll just need some fresh water. Just make sure that you have some fresh water for it, just so that you don't have any paint in the bottom, and then your Mod Podge doesn't turn a funny color when you're trying to put it over your clay here. So let's go. Alright, so I am using a paint palette for my Mod Podge just so that I don't have to dip directly into the jar. However, you will already have a little container for it, so you should be fine without a paint palette here. So I'm just going to go ahead and take one of my brushes, make sure most of that water is off. Now, Mod Podge does look very white on the paintbrush, so it might feel like you're gonna ruin your clay. However, it dries clear, so you don't need to worry about that. I'm just gonna go ahead and move these guys out of the way, and I'm gonna do one side at a time here. So make sure you coat the entire thing in a thin, even coat, and we're gonna do it to every one on the front, and then we're gonna let that sit and dry for at least 20 to 30 minutes. So let's get started on that. Alright, so I have them all fully covered. Make sure that you don't glob it on too thick and that you're getting it in all of the crevices of your creations so that everything is fully sealed. We will be adding a second coat to this, so it's okay if it's not perfect, but do try to get all of those. And I'm going to go ahead and let this dry. See you in 20 to 30 minutes. Alright. We're not going to say friends though. Alright, so these have gotten their second coat of Mod Podge. They are fully dry, and I am now ready to put on the magnets. So these are adhesive magnets, so you'll notice that this side has a little protective coat, and I'm going to peel that off and put it on the back. In your kit bags, you're going to have a lot more of the magnets and a lot more of the clay than I did, so you'll probably have a couple more magnets than I do. So just keep in mind to make sure that if it needs more than one magnet, you give it more than one. So, and just press it on. Hold it there for about 5 seconds. Alright, that one is good. And for 5 more seconds again. And the last one. This one I'm putting it at the top here so that it doesn't spin around if it's down here. I don't want it to fall down like that. Alrighty. Alright, that should do it. I hope you had as much fun making these as I did. I think that they are so cute, and you can make whatever shapes, whatever colors that you want, and they are super cool. and you'll have a lot of clay to really do whatever you like. So thanks for coming along while I made this cool clay craft.